Marianne, it's so lovely to be with you again.
Well, thank you. It's lovely to be with you as well.
Yeah, I follow your work, and you always, you're so eloquent in talking about the things that people struggle with and what's going on in the public domain, whether it's, you know, natural disasters or it's what we're seeing playing out in politics. And I wanted to just talk to you today about, you know, you talk a lot about the intersection of spirituality and politics, but just even more broadly, the intersection between us as people who are spiritual beings, but also the importance of us stepping into our power as change makers. So whether that's in a public forum or whether that's in our jobs or in our communities. But, you know, what do you think keeps many people from exercising their power to affect change?
On one hand, I think that there have been ways that we have been strategically disempowered, psychologically and emotionally, but that does not give us an excuse. I think many of us have internalized our disempowerment and seen ourselves as victims and seen ourselves as unable, when really that's kind of a cover, subconsciously, for an unwillingness to take responsibility. When you know, sometimes we have become too easy on ourselves. We ask ourselves, do I want to do this? When what we should be is trained since childhood to say, what is the right thing to do? Mm-hmm. And what is your responsibility in this situation? If a parent has a child who is sick, you don't go through kind of processing on what you have to go through. You know that you're going to take that child to a doctor, or you're going to do whatever it takes. Now, when you look at things like natural disasters, and you think for a moment about how many of them are caused by climate change, and you realize how much climate change, theoretically, is a result of a political system which has become a system of legalized bribery, where in something like in the United States, the Environmental Protection Agency, rather than serving as a real protector of the environment, has become more a protector of short-term economic gain for fossil fuel companies. So to the extent to which, if you do buy the notion that a lot of climate change is caused by fossil fuel activity, man-made activity, then you realize we did this. Because what you don't do has a result in life, just like what you do has a result in life. So I think that we stopped thinking and stop training our children to think, what is your responsibility? Life is not just about your rights, it's also about your responsibilities. A democracy is not just about your right, it's also about your responsibilities. Too many of us disengaged over the last few years. We've disengaged, we've bought into this philosophy and culture of self-absorption. I mean, these are such first world problems that we feel disempowered. Are you kidding me? You've got 12,000 children every day who starve on this planet. Mm. I mean, these are high on the Maslow pyramid. Mm. These are high-level concerns. And one of the reasons we are feeling this ennui, one of the reasons we are feeling this existential crisis, is because we're not showing up in the world as we could be showing up. Mm. Something in us knows I'm not doing what I came here to do. And from a spiritual perspective, you cannot separate a life of meaning and a life of purpose from a life lived in service to those who suffer.
Yeah.
So all these people who are putting on their blinders, not addressing the suffering of other sentient beings that is occurring on such a mass level. You know, 1 billion people on this planet live on $1.25 and less a day. I mean, most of us can't even, when you even allow yourself to think about what that means. Yeah. And what is it that you and I, Marty, just won the birth lottery? To even think about this, you and I have never lived a day, we've never lived an hour, really worried, how am I going to feed my baby? Mm-hmm. Yeah. How am I going to feed? So you not only have 12,000 children starving every day, imagine the trauma of a mother holding a baby in your arms. The baby is saying, I'm hungry, mommy. You have no way of feeding that child. So this massive level of human suffering is all around us. From a spiritual perspective, we're all one mind. So we're all picking this up. But then we are identifying our problems with our own, really within the context of our own self-centeredness. But I don't think me, when I do something really self-centered, I don't wake up in that morning and say, I don't think I'm going to be a self-centered jerk today. It's only later I go, what were you thinking? And that's really the process, I think, of maturation. When you talk about people's fear of breaking through their barriers, I think of healthy fear and unhealthy fear. We need more healthy fear. Because healthy fear would make us afraid of what we should be afraid of, which is the global catastrophes that are likely to occur if we don't stand up. That's what we should be afraid of.
Yeah.
What we should be afraid of is what's going to happen to this planet within the next 100 years if we do not make some massive changes. And when you become dedicated to that, you know, where there is love, there cannot be fear. When you stand in love for your children and your grandchildren, when you stand in love for your country and for your planet, those fears just dissipate. They're all just the neurotic confluence of basically self-centered perspective.
Yeah.
And, you know, I always say that 90% of the time, the advice that is always the best I can give myself is, Marianne, get over yourself.
Yeah.
It's not about you.
It's not about you.
It's not about you. Because the thought that it's all about me is what perpetuates the fear.
But here's where I think I see the complacency and the indifference. And, you know, we've all seen the ads on TV of the children, you know, malnourished children in Africa or other parts of the world. And people become so desensitized to those images. And I think it was Stalin that once said, you know, one death is a tragedy, a million is just a statistic. And I think as people become desensitized, and it's a long way away, and that tendency we have to the other, to those people who aren't like us, they live in a place, they have a different culture, they have a different language, they wear different clothes, they wear rings around their necks. I don't relate to those as fellow human beings. And I know that we are all one and we are all connected, but so many people feel disconnected from the humanity of others. And even in the US, you think about it, just because you have a different political ideology than me, I'm like, oh, therefore I don't connect with you on that human level.
I think of the people in my life who have really been change agents for me. And they have not been people who coddled that kind of ridiculousness. They have been people who looked at me like, who are you? Who are you? Or people have said, just figure it out. We have got to stop this culture of adolescence that is we are allowing to continue into the 30s and the 40s and the 50s and the 60s and 70s. Grown-ups care. That's what you are when you're an adolescent. It's all about me. It's all about me, and I can't relate. I'm desensitized. And then this is one of the reasons I've talked so much about the overprescription of antidepressants.
Yeah, we spoke about that last time.
Yeah, if you are desensitized to your own pain, you are more likely to be desensitized to the pain of others. In my country, we've taken this cheap yellow smiley face and just put it over everything. Happy, 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 as though a certain kind of cheap happiness, or at least superficial happiness, is the highest good. If you know, there's a Martha Graham phrase, blessed unrest. This is not a time, if you were thinking deeply about what's happening on our planet today, a grown-up feels concern. And to people who aren't there, I'm like, this is not a time so much to worry about people who haven't evolved to a certain place, as it is a time to co-create and collaborate with how many of us already have. We need a conspiracy of maturity. We need a conspiracy of adulthood. And we don't need to be coddling in ourselves or in others the kinds of processes which should stop by 18.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I know for myself as a parent, my husband and I, we've taken our kids on we've been blessed enough with the prosperity to take our kids to incredible places, but we've taken them to Nepal and to Vietnam and to Cambodia, and we were recently in Thailand, and countries where they're exposed to people who have none of the things that children today, adults today, can so easily take for granted.
That's right.
And I think
in some parts of the world.
Yes.
And in the certain classes within all parts of the world.
Yes, absolutely. And I know even though you can go to those places, it's easy to come back and then get caught up in our small little first world problem. I mean, you can come back and kind of go, oh, I stain my new top, whatever it is.
I don't feel that way as a mother. When I was small and my parents took us to all the places that you just mentioned, not Nepal, but I was in Cambodia. I was in Vietnam in 1965.
Yeah.
And people used to ask my father, well, why are you taking your kids so young they won't remember? And he said, it will get under their skin. It got under your kid's skin. You actually can't go on trips like you just described and ever really forget. Part of the problem, you come from Australia, right?
Yeah.
Australians travel.
Yeah.
Not enough Americans travel. Because the truth of the matter is, once you see those things, you aren't the same person. It's not so easy to come back. Yes, it's easy to come back and get lost in all the miasma of modern superficial comforts. But I don't think you ever can totally forget.
Yeah.
That's the value of travel.
And I also know, having grown up, on a dairy farm, one of 7 kids, where we had one shower for 9 people and one bathroom for 9 people, and I didn't even know that people all had their own toothbrush until I left home. It was like we shared toothbrushes. It was just really very simple. I've got a great immune system, so there's something to that. But when you've lived on very little, you realize how little you can live on. And you realize, even though I do like to blow dry my hair, or the many things that I enjoy about life today, we don't need those things. They're nice to have, but they're not necessary. But if you've never had that experience of realizing how little that we actually need, it's hard to appreciate what it is.
There are a lot of things like that. I've often said to people, I hope you'll get everything you want just so that you can get to the other side of it and know what you just said. Because there is something about the been there, done that factor. And in your case, it goes both ways, which gives you a marvelous vantage point. You neither have to be afraid of not having, nor overly impressed by having.
Yeah.
So you're on a marvelous perch that brings with it tremendous moral responsibility, which, knowing you, I know that you feel and seek to exercise.
Well, that's why we're talking, because when I met you, one of the first things you said to me, you said, what do you do? And I was a little bit starstruck, because Return to Love had been on my shelf for a long time.
Thank you.
Lined. And I said, I'm an author, but not like you. I'm not as big as you. And you said, there is nothing holy in diminishing yourself. Mm-hmm. And I've shared this with many people since then.
And as women, self-diminishing is a mental habit pattern.
Yeah. But how much we diminish ourselves as just a habitual pattern, diminish ourselves to others, but sell ourselves short in the world in how we show up, as though I'm not enough of something. I mean, I'm not as popular enough, or as famous enough, or I haven't sold enough books, or whatever it is, or successful enough. And I think the importance of stepping into our power to affect change. It's how I define power, our ability to affect change, and we all have that. And so for people who are listening, I think it's easy to go and go, oh, well, that's Marianne Williamson, her books have sold millions of copies, or that's Margie, she's whatever I've done. But actually every one of us has a role to play in affecting change, and we all have that responsibility. And I think, teaching our children that, but conveying that, the importance of that to people listening, people going out to vote in an election. And in America, you don't have to vote.
Well, self-diminishing is an insidious, lying, unconscious way of avoiding responsibility. Because if I own my power, I own the responsibility that comes with it. So it's much more convenient to just say I'm nothing. And of course, in Miracles, it says you have everything upside down, including arrogance and humility. It's not humble to say, oh, I'm nothing. It's actually arrogant, because either God created you and God lives within you, or not. If God created you and God lives within you, you can't be nothing. It is arrogant, however, to suggest that you created yourself. In advanced democracies, where only 1/5 of the world's population has the kind of power to affect influence on our governmental policy, like in countries such as yours and mine, nobody has the right to say I can't make a difference. And today, in the day of social media, if you have an Instagram page, you have influence. If you have a Facebook page, you have influence. If you have a Twitter account, you have influence. So it's one of those things that as I said, I think we need to stop coddling when people even say it. We need to stop being impressed. You know, there's something that happens when you say something and people around you are bored by it.
Yeah.
I just think when people even talk that way, it's like, you know, we need to stop giving it an audience.
Yeah. And so do we need to, at times I mean, it's easy as a parent, I can say to my kids, enough of that. You know, I'm not going to tolerate you saying that.
That's right.
Saying that to people who you are friends with and might be, well, you know, up yours and I'm done with you. Who are you to tell me that?
Listen, I have that in my career. Some people think, didn't you and I have a moment when I was
school?
Yeah. Somehow, I mean, I've had to learn to modulate the way I communicate in certain situations, but I'm not sorry that I have a reputation professionally as someone who is not loath to say, put the violins down, girls.
Yeah.
Just, you know, I say it sometimes, put the violins down. And I think one of the reasons why I have less patience with people with these, you know, mommy didn't give me, is because I'm around people in my career who have real problems. I am around people in my professional life, everything from parents of murdered children to people who are diagnosed with terminal illnesses or people whose children are, you know, real problems.
Yeah.
Real problems. And when I see some of the bravery and courage and willingness that is displayed by some of people who have real problems, when people come up with this preciousness around what aren't serious problems. Now, on one hand, nobody has a monopoly on suffering. I understand that. But our world is in crisis. And whether it's an individual crisis, a personal crisis, or a larger political crisis, a crisis is never convenience. Pearl Harbor would not have been, in my country, Pearl Harbor would not have been convenient. I don't know all of the particular forms that took. I had a friend once, a man I was dating, and he was Australian. And we were at a dinner party in New York. This was many years ago. And we were seated next to a former congresswoman who had been in the Congress in the United States for many years, and she was head of the, it must have been armed services, something having to do with international. And I remember being worried that he wouldn't have anything to talk to her about. And I came back, I went to the ladies' room, and I came back, and they were deep in conversation because it was all about Australia and the Pacific and World War II.
Oh, right. Okay.
They were both so locked. It was really fascinating to me. But I myself am somewhat ignorant. But my point is every country has had its crises.
Sure.
And they come when they come. Or personal crises, and they come when they come. Mm-hmm. And this is not a moment to be precious. This is not a moment. This is a moment when we must stand up as a generation and turn the ship around before it hits the iceberg. That iceberg could take the form of a nuclear catastrophe. That iceberg could take the form of a weather catastrophe. There are so many forms that it could take. But this is an all-hands-on-deck moment. And, you know, it's very sad when a child just never gets to experience their childhood. But there's also something pathetic about what happens when an adult never gets around to being an adult.
Yeah.
And I have had the professional experience of quite a few times. I'm talking to somebody, and she's the quivering lip, and then I just kind of talk to her as an adult, and I notice how her entire bearing changes. And her time said, "Isn't this preferable, really?" Sometimes our hopelessness and our helplessness and our little girlness and our image, it's just a habit pattern. It's a subconscious act. Yeah. It's just this mental habit. And sometimes the people who are the greatest allies and friends just say, stop that. Here's some water in your face.
Yeah.
Or in my life when I just felt people saying, kind of looking at me, and the whole look on their face was, who are you?
Yeah.
And you ask in life, who do you want to be respected by?
Yeah.
And you realize you're in this conspiracy of other people who are also hiding from their greatness. And so you're in this perverse comfort zone.
Mm. You know, I think it's funny what you say about people it becomes so transparent to them. They don't realize.
We don't even realize we're doing it.
That they are living with this childhood mindset and this way of being that's not grown up. And it reminds me a few times, I remember my daughter when she was in year 7, she was 12, and I did a parent-teacher conference, and the teacher said to me, "We expect a lot of your daughter." And I was sort of like perplexed. I wasn't sure what she meant. And I said to Maddie afterwards, she said, I expect a lot of you, but I don't think I expect anything of you that you can't take on. I expect you to manage all your own homework. I expect you to manage, your life, and I'll do what I need to do around that. And as a parent, treating our kids as little kids and mollycoddling them, it sets them up to be big kids as adults too.
I agree with you. And my daughter, I remember I was surprised when she said, "You were a tough mom." I said, "I was?" I didn't even know it, but she said, "No, you were good, tough." And there is age appropriate. We obviously, I'm sure you coddled your children plenty when they were little and all that. But we have a crisis of adulthood. And we have a crisis of adulthood in our civilization because we now have this generation that's just grown up with applause every time they woke up in the morning. And this has not really worked. I think we serve our children best. And clearly, you were the same kind of mother I was. We serve our children best. Knowing that when you leave this house, everybody's not going to just adore you because of who you are. You are going to have to perform, and you will be held accountable, if not by other people, then by the universe itself.
And if you make a mistake, little ones, you need to learn those.
Well, that's what childhood should be.
We need to give you enough space to make little mistakes.
That's why you want to do it with your kids while they're still at home, so that they can fail in your house, so that you can be there to walk them through. Okay, you failed. How can I help you get it better next time? How can I help you work through in your mind what led to this? To me, that's what childhood should be about. I also think that in our deepest part of us, we want to play the big game. But you can't play the big game in life unless you're taking the big responsibility in life. You have to build the habits of strength. You have to build the habits of fortitude. You have to build the habits of maturity. And so that's why I don't think there's so much to analyze about why I'm weak. There's simply a decision that today I will be strong. And none of us are there in every area. And, it's musculature that you hone.
I think that point, you just made a point. I think I want to just repeat it because I think it's such an important one. It's less about analyzing why we are weak. And let's talk about my childhood, what my parents did do and didn't do, and my first boyfriend, or whatever, the marriage breakup, whatever it is. And instead of, as you just said, today I will be strong.
Darkness is not a thing. It's the absence of a thing. You don't analyze darkness. You turn on the light and the darkness is gone. And from a spiritual perspective, fear is to love as dark is to light. You don't analyze the fear. You turn on the love.
Yeah.
If I'm doing this for you, because it's like citizenship. I love my country, so I'm going to do it.
Period.
And also for women like you and me, Margie, I think this is something that's true for me. What do we have to fear compared to a woman in some parts of the world who, if she dared, you and I can really talk about whatever we want to talk about here.
No one is going to beat us.
Dressed.
No one is going to imprison us.
That's right. Cut off our hand or even execute our sword.
Yeah, stone us, whatever.
Yeah, and so I feel that for women in advanced democracies, we have to think of ourselves not only speaking for ourselves, but for all the women in the world.
I couldn't agree more.
Who have no voice, who must be thinking on some level about you and me. What are they thinking?
Yeah. What are you doing for us? Because we have no power.
What are you thinking? Yeah.
I've long thought that unless those of us who have the power to affect change step in and own that power and do so with courage and purpose.
Right.
How can those who are truly disempowered ever have hope for a better future?
That's exactly right. And also just knowing someone cares. That's why organizations like Amnesty International, knowing someone cares. I love Gandhi's principles around soul force. Think about it. You go through something and somebody will send you an email. Margie, just want you to know I'm thinking about you. That somebody bears witness to your agony. There's soul force in that.
Yeah, there is a power. It's like that power of my parents have done this for years. Every single morning, they go through every child's partner, and all of their grandchildren's names by name and in a prayer. Just go.
That is so magnificent.
And I know every day my name is being lifted up in prayer by my parents on the other side of the world.
That is so beautiful.
There's such, like, it's just the most beautiful gift.
It is the most beautiful gift. That's really profound. I won't forget that.
Yeah. And so just in kind of wrapping up our conversation and bringing it full circle, we talked about the dire need today for people to step up and take responsibility for the big issues and the pressing problems facing, whether it's America as a nation or Australia or our world in general. But bringing it back to practical actions, to someone who's listening to this and they're thinking, this is very inspiring. I don't even know where to start. I don't even know what to do. How do you bring this down to?
I always say I'm never trying to get a message out. I'm trying to get a message in. The first thing to do is to demonstrate. The only thing to do is to demonstrate. It's not about trying to get other people to do anything, but I'll tell you something. When you just said, for people who say, I don't even know where to start, they're lying to themselves.
Yeah.
They know if they have emails that they should return. They know if they have friends who are suffering that they really should give a call. They know if they have a bill to pay that they really should, even if they can't afford it, lay out a plan. They know if they have a closet that really should be cleaned up and some messes that so I don't buy it.
Yeah.
I don't even know where to start. No, this stuff's just, the ditzy has got to be over. And we've got to stop talking about each other in those terms. What about people just don't know where to start? It's all an illusion. I don't believe that there is anybody who really doesn't know where to start. You have your life, and everybody has something. Oh, you know what you should do.
Yeah.
You know what you should do. Stop pretending to me you don't know. Just one thing that would be showing up more impeccably in your life today, rising to the occasion. You do know.
Stop spinning yourself that lie.
Yeah, and we need to stop coddling each other.
We're very good at spinning ourselves lies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but we have too much cultural permission for it. Social permission, oh, poor you. Yeah. We need to start supporting each other for our strengths. And one of the things that I find in my life is that if I'm trying to be strong and people can see it, then when I need something, people are there for me because if they see that I do try to be strong. After a while, if your weakness is just your scam, it's just your spiel, people stop even wanting to.
Yeah.
So if you want to be helped, help yourself. And then in those places where you need help from others, you're more likely to attract it.
Yeah. And you know, our way of being, how we show up in the world, what we radiate outwards, obviously.
It's everything because people subconsciously pick up everything. We're all subconsciously picking up everything. So everybody knows everything, whether they're conscious of it or not.
Yeah. Well, Marianne, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you are such a champion, and I love you. You are very to the point.
There's
to
no
the face.
time for anything else.
Yeah, and I say I find it really refreshing. It's like there's no mollycoddling. You are not a mollycoddler.
We're both mothers.
Yeah.
And we, we have clearly the same kind of philosophy of parenting. This is, I'm Jewish, and the reason the bar mitzvah has mattered over thousands of years is because a persecuted people needed to develop, well, at that time, real men. Now it's bar mitzvah also. But if the men didn't grow up and take care of the culture, the Jews would not survive. And that's true in any indigenous culture that has the rite of passage. Somebody has to grow up here or the tribe will not survive.
Yeah. And it's incumbent on all of us. All of us.
And also, I've noticed a generation that is more attuned to our own childhood trauma than any generation on record is more neglectful of the children in our midst than any generation on record. So if we're going to treat someone like a child, it should be a child.
Well, I think of all leadership and begins with self-leadership, and all change really extends from the inside out. Sure. And so we are not going to change anything around us for the better until we just stop and take a really long, hard look in the mirror and say, what is it Where do I need to change the story that I'm telling about myself as being powerless or a victim? And to quote you, to own that we are actually powerful beyond measure.
Because of who lives within us. If you have a sense of a higher power that lives within you, then you know that not because of yourself, but because of who and what lives within you, there is nothing you cannot do. I tell people all the time, you're not the faucet, you're not the water, you're the faucet. Just open up to receive, and all the power you could possibly want to experience will just move through you. To the extent to which you are receptive to be the vessel for that power will flow through you. And then other people will look at you and think, wow, you're so powerful, but you inside will know, actually, I personally had nothing to do with it. I just said yes.
It is just God's work in me.
That's right.
Yeah, and I'm grateful, and I'm going to use it. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.